Good morning, landscape lovers. I'm Felix from Holygon, and today we'll explore Landshape's brushes. So grab your easel and let's go. First, we'll start by making some space. So let's get rid of this tray, and let's also break out the brush toolbar. And let's keep the others up there. Okay, so here we got a plot. It's approximately 128 by 128 meters. And here's a scale figure for scale. And let's see how the brushes fare on this patch of terrain. Today we'll just brush the surface, so don't feel brushed off if we skip a few details. We'll be sure to cover more advanced features in a later tutorial. I would suggest we go from left to right. That is, we cover the grab brush, the raise brush, the sink brush, level brush, bank brush, slope brush, smooth brush, noise brush, mesh brush, and zone brush. Now, the little mini icon to the lower right represents a brush, and you can see this representation also when you hover with the brush above the terrain and you press Control, you can see a similar shape, right? And this shape tells you which parameters or values your brush is currently using. So once again, you just activate the brush, hover onto the terrain, and here you can already see a vertex or a point preview, and each dot corresponds to a vertex or a point in the terrain. And if we turn on hidden edges and zoom in, you can see this is really clear. Okay. So you can already, before you've started stroking, get a grasp of what the brush will hit if you activate a stroke. Now, in Landshape, as in Sketchup generally, the first line support is the status bar. And the status bar is down here in the lower right, and it says grab a brush. This is the active tool. And what can we do with it? Dash. You can press and drag vertically to move terrain. And if I click Control, what happens? I change parameters. So okay, let's try that. Try that. Zoom in a little bit. I press Control and see what happens. I get this parameter preview. And here I can see a visual representation of the radius, and by moving the cursor right and left, I can grow and shrink the size of the brush. By moving the cursor up or down, I can grow or shrink the fall off. Fall off is also known as blend or softness. Let's try that in practice. So if I go down, I have a low fall off, softness or blend. And if I use this brush, the grab brush, and I stroke vertically, this is what I get. However, if I increase the fall off, I get a much softer result, like so. And often in real life, a little bit of softness is a good thing, but sometimes you want sharp borders. The grab brush works like this. You simply hover over the terrain and you click up the left mouse button, and then you can drag the terrain up or down, like so. You grab and drag. The next brush is the raise brush, and as its name implies, you can raise the terrain. And if I simply click and drag, I will get a ridge like so. This has three parameters, so if I click Control and hold it, I see that in addition to fall off and radius, I also get height, and height is controlled by the mouse wheel. So if I scroll the mouse wheel upwards, I will increase the height and vice versa. This can be good if you temporarily want to increase the volume of the terrain locally to have more material to build or express yourself with. It has its complement in the sync brush, which works exactly the same way but downwards. The sync brush can be used to make depressions into the terrain like so. And note what I did here. I not only used the sync brush, but I used it in combination with Alt. Now, Alt toggles straight stroke. So if I click Alt on most of these brushes, not all of them, I can create straight strokes with a brush with just 2 clicks. So let's try that again. If we use the raise brush this time, go back, I'll click once, I'll toggle the straight stroke by clicking Alt, and then you should see a faint orange line like so. And then I click once and I get this result like so. Okay. I'll undo that. This is a nonsense terrain. It's just a playground to understand how brushes work a little bit better. Now let's move on to the fourth brush. This is the level brush, which makes terrain horizontal. You can also sample. So you see it has a little purple dot here, which represent the sample point. The level brush is very useful indeed because it allows you to create environments where the ground is level. And that's the preferred way of moving about from point A to point B for many people because it makes life so much easier than running up a hill. So what we can do to create a level area in Landshape is to use the level brush. And if I simply go like this and run the level brush, you can see that the terrain is sort of conforming to the brush. I have a fairly high fall off here. If I lower the fall off like so, and now I click, you can see that things are happening much, much faster, like so. Okay, and I've got a completely level uh, plateau up here. And this can be good if you want to, for instance, add a house or something like so. And let's do that just for funsies. Here's a house. I will place, if I place it over here, like so. Okay. Now, this around here doesn't look too realistic, so maybe we can use another brush to fix that. So to even out this difference here in elevation in a smooth way, we could use, for instance, this brush, which is the slope brush, slant terrain to average local slope. Let's try that. Let's see if that works. And now I'm using it with strength 100, and that was a bit too strong. So I'll undo that. I'll lower the strength by the mouse wheel. I'll increase the fall off like so. I'll lower the strength again a little bit, and I'll try this. And sometimes you get more natural result if you do the stroke with lower strength and maybe you run through it a couple of times rather than max out the strength and just stroke once. Okay, so this looks pretty smooth to me. Okay, it's often advantageous to turn on hidden edges so we can inspect the topology better. Yeah, this looks good. What about this brush? It says bank brush and it says flatten terrain along stroke direction, creating local embankment. What does this mean? It means that it, in contrast to the slope brush, the bank brush it reads the direction that your brush stroke is traveling in and flattens terrain along that direction. Okay? So the bank brush allows you to create a, an embankment which is flat or relatively flat in the direction of travel. So here I'm going up in this sort of curve, and here we can see that it's relatively flat along the stroke direction. So this can be used for various purposes, and one of them would be to prepare a road which could go here. So if we want to create some features in this rather monotonous terrain, we could add a road, and let us use a center line that I've prepared. This is just a simple curve, and if I select this, I can create a road. So this is not a brush, but brushes are meant to be used in conjunction with these pick tools to create good terrain. So let's do that. And now Landshape created a road. And while you don't have to prepare by doing a bank brush in advance, it can sometimes help the road to become even better. So this looks fine to me. I will take these and I will hide them. Okay. Sometimes when you work with brushes or other tools, you get a slight mismatch between the skirt and the terrain, or between the terrain and water and so on. And you can simply click on here on Update View, and Landshape will rebuild them for you. Okay, let's look at this road. If I turn on hidden edges, I see that it looks pretty good. And to check that out in with more kind of analysis, we can temporarily turn on view contours. Let's do that with a spacing of 0.5 meters, and we see that these lines that cross the road are all perpendicular to the direction of travel, and that is a good sign. We can see that there's a slight slanting here downwards, and that's a good thing. Okay, great. I'll turn off those contours, and let's continue exploring the brushes. So one thing which the road did was to embed lines, edges. It automatically embedded them. And if we turn on embeds here, view embeds, we can see these red markings here, and that means here's an embedded edge around these, the perimeter of the road. And what do these do? Well, they help you guide your brush strokes and also work more accurately. This brush here, it says noise brush, roughen terrain, adding grain. So let's do that. Let's liven up this part of the terrain. So I'll look at this from above. And you can use this view top to both look at above and do it in parallel projection. And then it's easy to draw with the brush like so, and get this area and noise it around a little bit. Maybe we'll do some extra like so. Okay, and say we're happy with this, and we commit, and hey, this is great. This is what we wanted. Some sort of rocky, rough. But then we have a problem that we don't want the road to look like this. Okay, so how do we solve that? Well, this is where fencing comes in. Fencing, also known as membranes, they act as a kind of wall that stops the action of your brush and some other tools from propagating from one place across the wall, or they can do so. So let's try this in practice. So if we activate the smooth brush, reduce terrain sharpness and grain, that sounds like something we want to do with the road. So let's try that. I'll turn off the skirt now. And here, if we right click, we can see that there are three options here: ignore fence, stop on fence, and stop by fence. So if we currently it's on ignore fence, so the brush will simply go through and brush whatever we tell it to brush. However, if we click on stop on fence, you can see here by the preview that the brush will only affect until and including the fence. If I click on stop by fence, it will stop before it even reaches the fence. And this means that we should be able to smooth the road in one single stroke. Let's see what is our strength. We can raise that a little bit, and let's see if we can do this. So, you see, I don't have to be very careful. As long as I hit any part of the road, the fence will do the rest. So let's look at this. And yes, we've got a smooth road again. And maybe we want to do something on the other side here. And we want to smooth, but not so much. Let's try that. So we'll lower the strength and maybe the radius, and then we can smooth here on the other side. But this time I'll take care not to include the fence. So I'll use stop by fence. And you can do click F6 on your keyboard to cycle between these states. So I'll use stop by fence, and now I can smooth just on the outside. I mean, in this case it doesn't really matter because the road is already smooth. But let's do this. Like so. Okay. So what have we got left? We have two brushes. We have mesh brush and we have zone brush that we haven't talked about. And I should add that if these brushes are divided into two kinds of brushes, the standard or classic brushes are the first ones, and the last three, noise brush, mesh brush, and zone brush, they are what we call area brushes. So they work in a slightly different way. So for instance, if we want to noise an area, instead of directly affecting the terrain mesh, you create an area like so. And this area acts as an intermediate. And here you can see the outline of the area in orange. And uh, with this active, I can change the strength. So I can change it to 400, which is a bit ridiculous, but you can clearly see the effect. I can also change the fall off. So if we do something high and then we do a fall off of say 30 meters, you can see that there's a nice blend in like so. So, and we can also hold shift. If we can hold shift press, we can remove parts of this area. Okay, we're still in the brush. It's still the same stroke, and we can remove parts of the stroke. We can add parts of the stroke. We can add strokes over here. This is technically the same stroke. I'll lower the fall off to 10. Let's see. So you can use this to experiment. And remember, if you feel a bit lost, simply read the first line support, which is the status bar here, and it will tell you some of the options that you can use. For instance, here it says shift equals unstroke. So let's try that again. If I hold shift and I unstroke, you see the grain that I added over there, it disappeared. So that's how these things work. And as I said, these three brushes are all area brushes: the noise brush, the zone brush, and the mesh brush. And as Landscapes works currently, the area brushes, they don't support fences, but the others do for now. Let's move on and look at the remaining two brushes. Both of them are area brushes, and their names are Mesh Brush and Zone Brush. Mesh Brush is the brush equivalent of the Mesh command. So while the Mesh command is a pick command which uses input geometry to drive resolution change in the terrain, uh, the mesh brush does it more expressively. You simply paint on the terrain in the areas where you want to change the mesh resolution, and something happens. Okay, so let's try that. First, we'll turn on hidden edges, and it's available over here as well, so we can see the topology a little bit better. So we'll turn on, activate mesh brush, and here, if I just mesh brush like this, it can look like almost nothing happens. A few diagonals that change direction. Why is this? This is because I'm currently using a resolution of 2 meters, which is the same one as the underlying terrain mesh. However, if for instance I type 4 meters, now Landshape will add a 4-meter resolution to this area. So which is the area I want to work with, maybe around the house like so. And you can see Landshape in real time remeshes, and I can once again do unstroke over here. To be a bit careful with unstroke, like so. And Landshape will recalculate, and I wanted to raise the resolution here, so I'll type 1 for 1 meter, and let's see if this works. Yes, that looks good. And I click enter to confirm, and here we are. When is higher resolution called for? It's called for in situation when you want to express higher surface granularity, and typically you don't need so much. The general advice is to start low resolution and only add resolution in areas where you really need it. Here, it doesn't make that much of a difference, actually. The last brush I'd like to show today is the zone brush. It's this one. And the zone brush paints a contiguous terrain using a single material at a time. So let's try that. So what we can do, we can temporarily hide the hidden edges. We can show on a layer or tag this material swatch. Now, as a guide for what I want to paint, this time I'll use contours. I'll turn on contours, and here we got elevation isolines. So what I'll do, I will run the zone brush. I will sample a material, for instance this one, and then I can paint. Since I know I want to splash and some water, I can use these contours as a guide. Let's try that. So this now becomes grass, like so. I press enter to commit, and now I can change the material. So maybe gravel is good. So now I want to do the transition between the main road and the house. I'll do this with gravel. So I'll go like so. And once again, this time I won't really be very finicky. And don't worry if the gravel overshoots the main tarmac road. We can fix this later. So something like this, okay? And I'll press enter to commit. I got this. And this doesn't look very pretty, so what I can do is that when I created the road, I got a control surface. It's on a tag. I'll turn on the control surface, select it, and go back and use the standard zone pick command. What it will do, it will read this face or surface and project it down to the terrain. So let's try that. I zone this and see what happens. Now our road is back again. Now I can also hide the contours, turn on hidden edges to see the geometry, and this looks good for my current purposes. And to finish off, maybe we can paint this one, and here I don't have to use the brushes because it already is a contiguous area that is contained by the road. So I'll simply use fill. This is not a brush, but when you get used to Landshape and learn to use the tools, you will combine brushes with these tools as well. So I'll find a suitable material, maybe this one, click once here to fill this part of the terrain. And by the way, if you want to change materials, you can do the same with these. So for instance, if I want another material here, you can click here to change the material to anything, and it will fill the entire zone. This time I think I wanted the gravel, so I'll go back with the gravel. And to finish off, maybe we can move using Placify the scale figure to up here. We can turn on some trees, we can select them and use Landshape's companion extension Placify once more, run the spawn brush and simply draw here to get some sort of wooden area like so, something like this. And once again, don't worry if you overshoot a bit, you can always press shift and remove this part like so. Okay, something like this. I press enter to commit. Yeah, there we go. I'll hide these and I'll go for the splash. There we go. And now we've created a mini model using the brushes in conjunction with some of the pick tools, and this is what we get. One last thing regarding the brushes is that when you run the brushes, for instance, I can do the smooth brush. If I right click, I can not just control the fencing, I can also quickly switch between brushes. So for instance, I go grab a brush and here we can, this was a little big, so we'll turn down the size like so, and we can do like so and then right click and go back to, for instance, the smooth brush, and here we can smooth the coastline a little bit like so. Nice and easy does it. And then we can simply rebuild these view items by clicking update view, and we get a smoother coastline over there. And that, landscape lovers, wraps up our brushing session today. Check back for more videos forthcoming on brushes, pick tools, and many more features in Landshape. Thank you very much.